Hello everyone, out here on the differential upgrade. This is the Dana 36, which is notoriously known as a weak differential. It came in the C4 Corvette with the automatic transmission and the small block. I guess I should feel pretty good about the fact that I managed to get these 5 years or so out of it, but my last engine upgrade, which put the horsepower over 500 at the crank, has exceeded the limitations of my little rear end. I've contacted the builder, and he says the modifications I have to do to the carrier here are not too complicated. So we'll get going here. This is the Dana 44 that we'll be replacing it with. Going from a 308 rear end ratio to what was advertised as a 333. I really would have preferred the 308 since I spend most of its time on the highway. That gives a little better fuel mileage, and it's got so much horsepower it lights the tires at any speed anyway. But it is what it is. If it becomes too much of an issue, I'll address the rear end ratio later. But I doubt if I will. You can see here I got a brace across the top. From what I understand, the Dana 44 is longer, so I'll have to do some modification on that upper support and these lower supports here. From what I understand, this front mounting location is the same, which is good. That way I believe the drive shaft is the same, and it'll give me a starting point to get everything lined up. Just as a note here, I bought an upgrade for the rear tie rods. The original ones from General Motors were tiny little wimpy things, and I got a set of these nice 5/8 tubular ones with Heim joints. But I feel much more comfortable about the stability of the rear. So I'll get some disassembly going on here. Try not to bore you too much with it, and we'll see what we run into. First up, let's get the drive axles out. Getting in here, trying to find the best way to get to it. My first couple choices were more aggravation than it's worth, but we did eventually get them out. All the little U-joints that disconnected. Let's see if we can wiggle this thing out of here without the universal caps falling off. And the second side went a little smoother. Got my jack out, get some of the coilover spring tension off, and I upgraded my mechanism of removal to the air impact gun. And all that battery stuff's nice, but sometimes it just, the old way is still the best way. And drive shafts next. Pretty much the same routine. They're held in the same way as the drive axles are. So we get in here and get this great big old drive shaft out and give you a peek. And here it is. Been any shorter, it wouldn't even be one. Then we'll get the 4-link lower bars off. Got some washers on either side of the heim joint making up the space in the spindle. So I'm taking a little time here and marking how many washers were on each side of the heim joint to center things up. This is a wrench that I had gotten from my dad. Who knows how old it is, but you can see she's got a little bend to her. So it's been after some of these big bolts before. The bolts are in there and they still got a little bit of tension on them from the coil springs, and so they come out easy, just too hard to get by my fingers, so it was a bunch of little fiddling getting it in and out, prying it out of the way. But it was just a nuisance. It wasn't a lot of pressure, just enough to keep it from coming out by hand. These two bolts here in the back are just like almost everything else on this car. It seems like even though it's basic and there is a fair amount of room to get to things, a lot of things are just barely too tight. I had purchased an oversized fuel tank. When I built the car, the original tank was only 12 gallons and this one's a 19 gallon. And the bolts will come out, but the heads just interfere with the bottom of the fuel tank, so it comes out a bit tough, but not so tough that I want to drain the fuel and drop the tank. So we just keep going with it and sneak them out of there. And all the bolts are out. Got my Harbor Freight transmission jack underneath it. and we'll kind of sneak it out of here. Going nice and slow, being here by myself. I want to make sure it doesn't gain any momentum and get away from me. So we'll sneak it out of here and get her on the bench. The differentials are pretty close in size. Looks like this snout sticks out about a ½ inch longer than this one, and the length of the case appears to be about a ½ inch longer in the back. So I'm not going to have to make a lot of modifications. I think the drive shaft will work. I don't think that ½ inch will cause me any trouble, and it should fit in there. The Corvette uses the rear differential cover as part of the suspension on the rear of the C4. So I'm going to cut what's referred to as the bat wings off, and because all I need is just a diff cover. I don't use this. I have the 4-link suspension, so this is unnecessary. And I had a great plan. I dug my Sawzall out of the cabinet, got a big old aggressive blade on there since this is aluminum, and proceeded to cut away. The only problem is, as you'll see here in a few minutes, this was the last cut that my Sawzall wanted to do. It appears that the trigger has died, and I've spent the afternoon looking, and the trigger is obsolete. I did find one on Amazon, but I can buy a used new saw or a different saw for the price of the switch, but I'll probably get the switch and give it a try. So while that part didn't work, we used the cutoff wheel and the hacksaw, but we'll get them off. And as you can see, I did get the bat wings cut off, got the edges ground nice and smooth. So that's the end of part 1. Part 2, we'll start modifying the carrier. Thanks for watching.